Atlanta police are investigating after a mom was killed this week near Cleveland Avenue in Atlanta. The family of Courtney Reese devastated after her sister was also a victim of gun violence just months ago. 11 Live's Erica Murphy has our top story today. She's joining us live from the neighborhood on the city's southeast side. Just to emphasize that devastation, Erica, this has got to be such a hard story for that area. What are you hearing from people over there?
Definitely devastating for the people who live in this area. Courtney was just 32 years old, and she was caring for 4 young children when her life was cut short on Tuesday, just here off of Cleveland Avenue and Springside Drive. Police say they were called out to the 39 Springside Drive Southeast just before 9 o'clock. They found Reese suffering from several gunshot wounds, and she succumbed to those injuries.
Courtney Reese was standing outside a home on Springside Drive in southeast Atlanta when a security camera captured the final confrontation of her life. She was 32 years old, a mother of 4, and the man coming toward her was someone she knew intimately, Derrick Rankins, a man described as her boyfriend or former boyfriend. But by the summer of 2024, their relationship had reportedly fallen apart. And after Courtney was killed, her family and people close to the case began talking about what they believed had caused that breakup. They claimed Courtney had discovered something Rankins desperately wanted kept private. The allegations circulating around the family and online was that Courtney had learned Rankins was secretly gay or involved with men. And people began asking whether she had confronted him about it, whether she had threatened to expose what she knew, whether the fear of that secret getting out had turned a breakup into something much more dangerous. Then came August 20th. Courtney ended up outside a neighbor's home. The camera was recording. She could be heard pleading. A man approached. Then shots rang out. Courtney fell. The shooter disappeared. And within hours, police were looking for Rankins. But they would never get him into a courtroom. 1 week later, a fugitive task force tracked him to a house in Stockbridge. Police say Rankins opened fire. An Atlanta investigator was shot. Rankins barricaded himself inside. Hours later, he was dead. No trial. No opportunity to publicly test the secret Courtney had supposedly discovered. No chance to hear Rankins explain why a relationship that had once been intimate ended with Courtney pleading for her life on somebody else's porch. And this family was already living through another tragedy. Because only months before Courtney was killed, her younger sister had also died from gun violence. One family had barely begun mourning one daughter. Now they were preparing to bury another. So was Courtney's murder simply the final explosion of a relationship that had become dangerous? Or did the private information she allegedly discovered make Rankins believe she knew too much? Subscribe to this channel. Before Courtney became the woman seen in those disturbing final seconds, her family knew her as somebody completely different. Courtney Reese was raising 4 children, 3 girls and a boy. Local family coverage described the children as ranging from elementary school age to early adolescence. Their mother was the person at the center of their daily lives. Courtney's sister Lena described her as a vibe, the life of the party, everybody's hype man, the one who knew how to bring energy into a room. She cooked. She loved making party food. She laughed. She smiled constantly in photographs. And from the way her family talked about her afterward, Courtney was not someone who faded quietly into the background. She had presence. She was the kind of person relatives expected to hear before they even saw her. But by the summer of 2024, there was grief behind that smile. In May, only a few months before Courtney's own death, her younger sister had been shot and killed. The family was already devastated. Courtney had lost a sister. Her parents had lost a daughter. Her children had lost an aunt. And according to people close to Courtney, that death changed the way she thought about the life she was building around her children. She wanted stability. She wanted peace. She wanted to protect them from the kind of chaos her family had already experienced. And one relationship that was reportedly falling apart during this period was her relationship with Derrick Rankins. Rankins was 33. He was not an unknown man who spotted Courtney on the street. He had access to her because there had been a romantic relationship between them. That matters, because the most dangerous person in many relationship crimes does not have to break into a victim's life. They are already inside it. They know where the person lives, who their family is, where they spend time, what makes them angry, what makes them afraid, what they are trying to hide, and what secrets exist between them. After Courtney's murder, her family believed the relationship with Rankins had already ended. But the reason people began discussing that breakup so fiercely was the allegations surrounding what Courtney had supposedly discovered. The story that spread was not simply that Rankins had cheated with another woman. It was much more personal. Courtney's family and online commenters claimed she discovered Rankins had been secretly involved with men or was hiding same-sex relationships. And if Courtney really had uncovered that part of his private life, people close to the story believe it may have created a serious confrontation between them. Not because being gay or bisexual is somehow connected to violence. It is not. The issue people were questioning was exposure. Did Rankins believe Courtney was going to tell other people? Was there embarrassment, fear, anger over losing control of information he wanted kept private? Had Courtney already started talking? Those questions spread rapidly after her death. And suddenly, people were looking at the breakup differently. This was no longer being discussed online as just another couple who had stopped getting along. The theory was that Courtney knew something Rankins did not want other people to know. And once she no longer wanted the relationship, she also no longer had any reason to protect his secret. That possibility became one of the most controversial parts of the case. But it is important to understand where that theory sits. The family and online community discussed it. Police publicly described Courtney's killing as a domestic violence-motivated homicide. Rankins died before any murder trial could establish whether fear of exposure was actually the motive. That is all the distinction we need. Because regardless of whether the secret was the final trigger, the relationship had clearly reached a dangerous place. And by Tuesday, August 20th, 2024, whatever tension existed between Courtney and Rankins was about to move from private conflict to public violence. It was an ordinary summer evening in southeast Atlanta, Springside Drive, near Cleveland Avenue. Around 9 o'clock, Courtney was in an area where people were home. Cars were outside. Porch lights were on. The kind of neighborhood where most people would expect the night to pass without ever becoming part of a homicide investigation. Reports say an argument took place. And at some point during that conflict, Courtney moved toward another home. That movement tells us something important without requiring us to invent a single word she was thinking. She was creating distance. She was no longer staying inside the confrontation. She was going toward another person's property, another door, another possible witness, another possible source of help. And there was a security camera positioned outside that home. The camera captured approximately 27 seconds that Courtney's family would never be able to forget. A figure dressed in light-colored clothing could be seen approaching. Courtney's voice could be heard. She was pleading. Local coverage later reported her saying words like, "Please, don't." Then came the gunfire. Not one shot, multiple shots. Local family coverage reported Courtney was shot around 10 times. The shooting continued after she went down. Then the figure ran. That is what makes the footage so difficult. There is almost no distance between Courtney asking for mercy and the violence beginning. No long confrontation. No dramatic countdown. Just a woman trying to get help and then gunfire. Atlanta police rushed to Springside Drive. When officers arrived, Courtney was suffering from multiple gunshot wounds. They tried to save her. They could not. Courtney Reese died there at 32 years old. And her 4 children were now without their mother. The same family that had been grieving Courtney's younger sister for only a few months was suddenly being forced to make another funeral arrangement. But there was one immediate difference between the two tragedies. This time, police quickly had someone they wanted to find: Derrick Rankins. By the next day, Atlanta police had obtained arrest warrants connected to Courtney's killing. Officials described Rankins as dangerous. And he was gone. He had not waited at the scene. He had not turned himself in. He had disappeared. For Courtney's relatives, grief now came with fear. The man police believed had killed Courtney was still somewhere outside police custody. And if authorities considered him dangerous enough to warn the public, there was no guarantee the violence had ended with Courtney. The Southeastern Fugitive Task Force joined the hunt. The U.S. Marshals Service, Atlanta Police, other regional law enforcement agencies. Now the story that had begun as a domestic argument on Springside Drive had become a full-scale fugitive search. And while officers were trying to locate Rankins, the public was digging through the relationship. That is when the rumor about his private life began gaining even more attention. People were not just asking, "Why did he kill her?" They were asking, "What did Courtney know?" For many viewers, those became two versions of the same question. If Courtney had discovered Rankins was secretly involved with men, did she end the relationship because of it? Had she confronted him? Was she planning to tell other people? Had someone else already found out? Was Rankins terrified that information about his private relationships was going to become public? The more the rumor circulated, the more people believed it explained the brutality of the shooting. Courtney was not simply killed during a random encounter. She was confronted by someone with whom she had history. And whatever was said between them that night ended with her trying to reach another person's home. But there is another interpretation. The alleged secret may not have needed to be the entire motive. Sometimes in controlling relationships, the content of the argument changes, but the underlying issue remains the same. Control. One person decides a relationship is finished. The other person decides they do not have the right to make that decision. One person knows something private. The other believes they should control whether it gets repeated. One person creates distance. The other follows. That is why the allegation mattered to the public even without a trial. It added another possible layer to a relationship police already considered central to Courtney's death. And for an entire week, Rankins remained free. Then investigators finally got the lead they needed. Tuesday, August 27th. Exactly 7 days after Courtney was killed, authorities tracked Rankins to a residence in Stockbridge, Georgia. For Courtney's family, this should have been the beginning of the legal process. Rankins would be arrested, booked, taken before a judge. Prosecutors would begin building their case. The Ring camera footage would become evidence. Witnesses would be interviewed. Phones could be examined. The relationship history could finally be pulled apart in public. And perhaps the family would learn whether the secret Courtney allegedly discovered really had anything to do with her murder. None of that happened. When the Southeastern Fugitive Task Force approached the Stockbridge residence, Atlanta Police Chief Darren Schierbaum said Rankins opened fire on officers. One of the investigators was hit. He was an 18-year veteran of the Atlanta Police Department assigned to the fugitive unit. A bullet struck him in the arm. Now Rankins was not only the man police wanted in connection with Courtney's death. Police say he had fired on law enforcement trying to arrest him. The wounded officer needed immediate treatment. A Henry County Sheriff's Office helicopter transported him to Grady Memorial Hospital in Atlanta. His injuries were serious enough to require emergency care, but were not considered life-threatening. He was expected to survive. Back in Stockbridge, Rankins had barricaded himself inside the house. Officers surrounded the property. Nobody knew how the confrontation was going to end. Rankins had already demonstrated that he was willing to shoot at the people trying to take him into custody. A tense standoff began. Hours passed. Then police entered the final phase of the operation. Derrick Rankins was found dead. The immediate question was how. Had he taken his own life? Had he been killed during the exchange with police? The Georgia Bureau of Investigation took over that part of the case. But for Courtney's family, one fact mattered immediately. Rankins was never going to stand trial for Courtney Reese's murder. The man they believed had killed her was gone. Courtney's father, James Dupree, later responded with a mixture of relief and exhaustion. He made clear that he did not normally wish death on another person, but he also believed Rankins had been a danger while he was on the run. From his perspective, Rankins could no longer hurt Courtney. He could no longer shoot at police. He could no longer place another family in the position theirs was already in. That did not mean Courtney's father suddenly had peace, because Rankins's death also closed the door on information. There would be no interrogation in a murder case. No prosecutor asking Rankins about Courtney. No defense attorney presenting a competing explanation. No phone evidence introduced at trial. No witnesses telling a jury what Courtney had said about the relationship. And no courtroom answer to the allegation that had taken over social media. Did Courtney die because she discovered Rankins was secretly involved with men and he feared she would expose him? That question died legally with Rankins. But publicly, it became even louder, because now nobody could force an answer. And this is where I want you to tell me what you believe. Do you think the alleged secret was the real trigger behind Courtney's murder? Or do you think the relationship had already become about control, and the secret simply became one more thing Rankins could no longer control once Courtney walked away? Because either way, one thing remains disturbing. Courtney was the person trying to get distance that night. She was the person captured pleading. And she was the person who never made a home. While people online debated Rankins's private life, Courtney's family had something much more immediate to deal with. For children had lost their mother. The oldest was only 13. The others were still children themselves. And now the family had to figure out who would provide what Courtney had been expected to provide. School, food, clothing, emotional support, birthdays, discipline, comfort. The ordinary responsibilities of motherhood that suddenly become enormous when the person who handled them disappears overnight. Courtney's older sister Lena spoke publicly about that reality. Courtney was gone, but her children were still here. The family wanted those children to continue receiving everything Courtney had planned to give them. That meant Courtney's relatives were grieving and rebuilding at the same time. At her vigil, people gathered with purple balloons. Purple was Courtney's favorite color. There was music, family, friends, people crying, people laughing, people sharing memories. They did not want her final moments on a security camera to become the only thing anyone remembered about her. They wanted people to remember the woman who cooked, the woman who smiled, the woman who showed up with energy, the mother, the sister, the daughter. And during the gathering, one of Courtney's children said something that showed just how quickly the family roles had changed. Her 13-year-old daughter reassured her younger siblings. "Don't worry, we got you for life." Think about what that means. A 13-year-old child had just lost her mother, and instead of only being allowed to grieve, she was already trying to make her younger siblings feel safe. The kind of reassurance Courtney herself might have given them. That is how quickly violence forces children into roles they were never supposed to carry. And this family was not only mourning Courtney. Symmetria's death was still fresh. Courtney had been grieving her younger sister when she was killed. Now the same parents who buried Symmetria were burying Courtney. The same siblings had lost two sisters. Courtney's children had lost an aunt, then their mother. Only months separated the funerals. That is why the rumor about Rankins' sexuality should never become bigger than what was actually done to Courtney. The allegation matters because it may explain the conflict people believed existed between them. It helps us understand why family members thought exposure might have been part of the tension. But the scandal is not that a man may have been gay or bisexual. The scandal is the possibility that someone could believe protecting a private secret was worth another person's life. If Courtney discovered something about Rankins and decided she no longer wanted to be with him, she had the right to leave. If she confronted him, she had the right to speak. If she told someone else what she believed she had discovered, none of that justified violence. And if the secret had absolutely nothing to do with the shooting, the same conclusion remains. A breakup does not justify murder. Embarrassment does not justify murder. Rejection does not justify murder. Losing control of a relationship does not justify murder. Courtney was alive when that confrontation began. She was trying to reach another home. Minutes later, she was dead. Police identified Rankins as the man they wanted for the homicide. 7 days later, when law enforcement found him, police say he opened fire on them too. One officer was wounded. Rankins died. The manhunt ended. But the questions did not. And perhaps that is why Courtney Reese's case continues to pull people into the comments. Because the ending is clear. The motive is not. The family's allegation gives one explanation. Courtney discovered Rankins was secretly involved with men. Their relationship ended. He feared what she knew could become public. Then she was killed. The official law enforcement description gives the broader explanation. Domestic violence. Maybe those two things were connected. Maybe the alleged secret was only one piece of a much larger relationship breakdown. Because Rankins died before trial, nobody ever had to prove which version was true. What is undeniable is the cost. Courtney Reese was 32. She was a mother of 4. She was still grieving the murder of her younger sister. Her family remember her as somebody who brought energy, laughter, and food into every gathering. And on August 20th, 2024, she found herself outside a neighbor's home asking for help. The camera recorded the final seconds. The man police believed was responsible fled. A week later, he was dead too. And Courtney's children were left to grow up inside the aftermath. So I want to know where you stand. Do you believe the allegation that Courtney discovered Rankins was secretly involved with men explains why their relationship ended, and possibly why the confrontation became deadly? Or do you think the bigger issue was control, with Rankins unable to accept Courtney walking away regardless of what secret she had discovered? And if fear of exposure really was part of the motive, what does it say about a person who would rather silence someone permanently than face the consequences of their own private life becoming known? Keep the discussion focused on the violence and the choices made in this case, not on condemning anyone for their sexual orientation. Courtney deserved to walk away from any relationship she no longer wanted. Her children deserved to have their mother come home. And her family deserved more than 2 funerals in a matter of months. Subscribe to this channel.